Hi, I'm Gordon. They said Mom died peacefully. They said I didn't need to come. But what they didn't say was that they rewrote her will, left my name out, buried her without me. And when I found her old prayer book, I nearly set it on fire. But then, inside, taped to the back cover, was a key. And under it, a folded paper with handwriting that tore my whole world open. Turns out, the ones who said they were family had planned this for years. So now I'm asking myself, if the people who raised me could lie like that, what else are they hiding? I didn't follow the others to the diner. I told them I needed time alone, which was only half the truth. The real reason, I couldn't stomach pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. So I walked back alone to Mom's house, her house, now cold, empty, and suddenly foreign, the kind of silence that made your ears ring. The screen door let out a tired squeak as I stepped in. Dust floated through the afternoon light like it had been waiting for me. Knitting baskets untouched in years, frames lining the hallway showing versions of us that only existed in photos. A young me grinning, a younger her, full of something I couldn't name anymore. I moved through each room slowly. Each floorboard under my boots groaned like it remembered things I'd rather forget. The smell of must and lavender. The backyard, wild with overgrown weeds. And then there it was. The small room at the end of the hall. Her prayer room. Always locked. I used to joke it was her secret bunker. She never laughed. I pulled open the keepsake drawer in the hallway cabinet. My fingers found the old brass key taped under the lid just like I remembered. A label in her handwriting. In case of peace. Whatever that meant. The lock clicked. I pushed the door open. Inside, it looked like she'd never left. The tiny table with her rosary, the wooden cross on the wall, the worn cushion with a sunken middle. The room didn't smell like the rest of the house. It smelled like old paper and something sweet. Incense, maybe. There it was, her prayer book. Sitting dead center on the table like it had a life of its own. The rosary wrapped around it, as if to protect it. I stared at it for a long time. My chest tightened. It wasn't grief, not yet. It was something more bitter. She loved this book more than she ever loved me, I muttered. I remembered being 17, trying to talk to her, tell her I was drowning after Dad died. And she'd just close the door and whisper to the book. Like that book had all the answers and I was just noise. I struck a match. Watched the flame flicker near the edge of the cover. It would take just a second. One flick of the wrist. Then, something fluttered loose. A paper, folded tight, slipped out between the pages and landed near my feet. My fingers extinguished the match without thinking. I unfolded it. Yellowed, but the ink was clear. A notarized letter dated 1997, addressed to Mom, from a hospital attorney. Temporary legal guardianship denial due to mental instability, concerns about Gordon. I read that line 5 times. What? I dropped into her old prayer chair. I remembered that year, 1997. My whole world changed. Dad was gone. Nobody told me anything. I thought it was just grief. But this... I stared at the words. I wasn't crazy, but they thought I was. Why didn't she ever tell me? Beneath the letter was a small key taped to the bottom of the paper. A no label, just there, waiting. I didn't move. My hand shook. Buzz. My phone lit up with a group text. Meeting at the diner to discuss the estate. No need to bring Gordon, he's too emotional. I froze, the kind of still that hurts. Too emotional. I buried her. I sorted her bills. I cleaned every inch of this place while they were off doing God knows what. I paid her medical debt when no one else even called. Too emotional, I repeated out loud, like it was a joke. Screw them. They wanted to play family without me. Fine. I had the letter. I had the key. And something told me that was worth more than all the pie at that damn diner. I stuffed both into my coat pocket, slowly, like I was storing ammunition. I walked back to the living room. The prayer book still lay open, face down on the floor. I picked it up, brushed off the cover, placed it gently back on the shelf. For a second, I just stood there. Maybe she wasn't praying against me. Maybe she was praying for me. Or worse, maybe she was hiding something from me, something she thought I couldn't handle. Too bad she never asked, but I wasn't 17 anymore. I looked around the house one last time, then whispered to no one. No more waiting, no more silence. The town looked the same that night, but something in me had changed. I walked down Main Street holding a paper bag with a loaf of bread and a few canned soups. Comfort food, I guess. But the weight in my chest made everything feel heavier than it was. When I turned the corner past the diner, I didn't expect to see them. But there they were. Three cars I knew too well. My brother's silver truck, my sister's minivan, and her husband's Buick, parked right up front like they owned the place. Inside, through the frosted glass, I could make out their shapes, bunched together in a booth like it was just another Sunday night out. Only this time, papers were spread out between their coffee cups, and they weren't just talking. They were scheming. I stood there for a long minute, watching. No one looked up. No one noticed me, not even once. They laughed, leaned in close, like the death of our mother was just business to finish. They were always good at deciding my fate when I wasn't in the room, I said under my breath. Maybe being excluded wasn't some careless oversight. Maybe it was always the plan. And I knew this feeling too well. It wasn't just tonight. It was the echo of a memory I couldn't shake. 10 years ago, I stood in the same place. Different diner, different meeting, but same energy. They were all talking about selling Mom's land, her garden, her pride. I told them she needed that garden. She'd started forgetting names then, mixing up the days. That garden kept her grounded. "You're just being emotional," my sister snapped, like that was a crime. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just left. Back then, silence felt like the only weapon I had. But tonight, I knew better. I walked past the diner without looking back, turned down the side road to Uncle Roy's place. He lived behind the hardware store, in a house that hadn't changed since the 70s. The kind of place where the screen door never shut right, and the light over the garage always flickered. He was in the shed when I arrived, just him, a cooler, and the radio playing some old country tune. I pulled out the letter I found in the prayer book and handed it to him without a word. Roy didn't read it right away. He just stared at the envelope like it had grown teeth. When he finally unfolded it, his face hardened. "She promised me she destroyed this," he muttered. "What is it?" I asked. "Why was I denied guardianship after Dad died? Why did nobody tell me anything?" He didn't answer at first, just took a long drink from his beer and sighed through his nose. "There was a legal thing, back then," he said. "They didn't want you handling anything because they thought you weren't stable enough. Your mom was grieving, scared, and your brother, well, he pushed it hard." I blinked. "My brother?" Roy nodded slowly. "He convinced the lawyer you were spiraling. Said you couldn't handle money, couldn't handle her care. Said you'd sell the house and vanish." I wanted to punch something. "And nobody thought to ask me?" "You were 17, Gordon, and he was charming in front of the right people." I left that shed without finishing my beer. My stomach churned with something that felt like fire. Back at Mom's house, I sat down at the old computer and pulled up the county record site. It was slow, clunky, but I knew what I was looking for. There it was. 2 weeks before Mom passed, the property title for the family farm had been transferred into a trust. One that didn't have my name on it. Not as a beneficiary, not as a trustee. Nowhere. $600,000 worth of land, signed away like I didn't exist. "They did this behind my back," I whispered, leaning back in the chair. "While I was changing her bedding, cooking her meals, driving her to appointments. They were at the damn bank." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat still, staring at the screen, memorizing every line. They wanted me erased. I stood up, walked to the shelf, and pulled the prayer book down again. I didn't know what I was hoping to find. Another note, maybe a confession. But something in me told me not to let go of it just yet. As I flipped through the pages, something caught my eye. A single line, underlined in red. "A time to keep silence, and a time to speak." Mom used to whisper that when I was angry. I thought she was trying to quiet me. But now I wondered if she meant something else. Maybe she believed I'd know when my time came. Well, that time was here. I opened my email, typed in my brother's address. Subject line, none. Message, "I know what you did. This time, I won't be quiet." And I hit send. I didn't sleep much. After sending that email, My mind stayed in overdrive, replaying everything, rewinding, fast-forwarding, hunting for moments I'd missed. At sunrise, I found myself back in the garage, poking through a box of old albums I'd shoved there a decade ago. One of them had loose pages stuffed between the covers, mostly church bulletins and family photos with curled edges. That's when I saw it, a yellowed envelope. It wasn't addressed to me. The name was unfamiliar, Mr. Colby Rand, attorney at law. I flipped it over. No stamp, no postmark, just my mother's handwriting across the front. In the bottom left corner, she'd scrawled, "To be read in case of family dispute." It hit me like a gut punch. I held the envelope for a long while before opening it. It was sealed tight, untouched. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I looked up the address printed on the top right corner. The law firm still existed. Same building, same name, probably the same man. I called using a different name, John Ellis, just in case. If my brother caught wind of this, I didn't want to give him a head start. I had the appointment within the hour. The law office looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years. Hardwood floors worn smooth, legal books that smelled like they hadn't been cracked open in just as long. Mr. Rand was a small man with thick glasses and a voice like sandpaper. He took the envelope, read the handwriting, and sat back in his chair like someone had just poured cold water down his spine. "She did come here," he said after a long pause. "Months before she passed, said there were pressures at home." He pulled out a small locked cabinet from behind his desk and opened it with a silver key. Inside was a folder, my mother's name on the label. He slid it toward me and opened it slowly. "She was planning to revise her will," he said. "Notarized drafts, nothing finalized, but clear intent." Inside was a version of her will I'd never seen before. My name stood out, next to every line that mattered. Medical authority, financial decisions, all of it assigned to me. "She never signed it," Mr. Rand said, "but she brought it here, told me to keep it in case things got complicated." My hands trembled, not from surprise, but from validation. For once, something that confirmed I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't just emotional. "Why didn't she finish it?" I asked. "She was scared," he said plainly. "Said your brother was watching everything. Said she wasn't sure who to trust." And then he reached back into the cabinet and pulled out a small recorder. "She left this for you. Told me not to play it unless you showed up with that envelope." He hit play. The tape crackled like rain hitting a tin roof. Then her voice, soft, strained, familiar in a way that gutted me. "Gordon, if you're hearing this, it means you've found the envelope. I'm sorry." I should have been braver. She paused. I could hear her breathing, catching. "I know what they've said about you. I know they made decisions and told you it was love. But I saw it. I saw everything you did. You stayed. You helped. You showed up." Another pause. "I didn't protect you when I should have. I let them run the show. Your brother, he's not who he used to be. He made me believe I was losing my mind. Maybe I was, but not enough to forget who you are." The tape clicked off. I didn't say anything, didn't cry. I just stared at the floor. She knew. She knew. And still, she didn't stop them. All those times my siblings brushed me off, gave me vague answers. "Don't worry, it's handled." Or, "Mom didn't want to upset you." I thought they were trying to spare me. I thought they were clueless, but now I saw it. It wasn't ignorance, it was consensus, silent, calculated. Even my sister once said, "Some truths don't need airing." Back then, I thought she meant peace. Now I saw it as a threat. They knew about this version of the will, and they buried it. Mr. Rand leaned forward. "This could go to court, but it's risky, messy, it'll get ugly." I nodded. "So be it." He handed me a manila folder with copies of the draft will and the tape. "Document everything," he said. "Don't speak unless you're ready." Back at the house, I created a folder on my computer, titled it Mom's Real Wishes. I scanned the documents, transcribed the audio, labeled everything. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth, about not disappearing like they wanted me to. As I left the law office, something caught my eye. A blue pickup truck, my brother's, parked right outside the same building. He wasn't supposed to know I was here, but he did. The sky was a pale gray by late morning, not quite raining, but the kind of heaviness that felt like something was waiting to fall. I stood in the hallway outside Mom's study. I hadn't stepped foot in there since I was a teenager. That room was always off limits. "It's where I pray, not where we talk," she'd once told me, so I never asked again. But now I had the key, the one I found taped inside her prayer book, next to the letter that ripped the lid off everything I thought I knew. The doorknob gave a little resistance before creaking open. The room smelled like paper, cedar, and silence. Dust floated like snowflakes through the slants of light coming through the blinds. I moved to her old desk. Each drawer slid open with a reluctant groan. Inside were stacks of bills, rubber-banded rolls of undeveloped film, and an address book so worn it looked like it belonged in a museum. The bottom drawer had a brass plate on it. Private. I held the key between my fingers. For a second I stood there, heart pacing, hand trembling, then slid it in. Click, it opened smooth. Inside, I found a handful of thick envelopes, a small leather-bound ledger, and a stack of photographs tied together with twine. All of it carefully arranged, untouched by time. I picked up the photos first, family snapshots, backyard barbecues, birthdays, Christmas mornings. But something felt off. I flipped through them, one by one. There were baby pictures of me, my 7th birthday, a trip to the lake when I was 12, then nothing. From age 17 on, I was gone. They kept taking photos, dozens of them. My siblings, their kids, even their pets. But not one with me, not one where I was even in the background. It wasn't like I hadn't been around. I'd driven down every Thanksgiving, sat through dinners, fixed the water heater twice. I started feeling it in my chest. Tight. Hollow. Behind one photo frame was a torn scrap of paper tucked between the cardboard and the glass. It was Mom's handwriting. He disappeared slowly so no one noticed. My hand shook. That wasn't neglect. That was erasure. Intentional. They'd made a version of this family that didn't include me, and no one had said a word. I set the photos down and opened the ledger. First page, Rand Legal Trust, monthly transactions. Every month a payment. Small amounts, but consistent. I flipped further. Tucked behind the last page were printed memos, stapled and marked confidential. The heading read, "Concerns regarding Gordon Miller's capacity." Each one signed by someone I knew, some I hadn't spoken to in years, one by a neighbor who once borrowed my tools, another from a cousin I hadn't seen since the funeral 5 years ago. They called me unstable, erratic, prone to emotional distress. One memo, "It is advised he not be given financial control during Mrs. Miller's decline." Then I saw it, my brother's handwriting on the bottom of a printed form, his name clear as daylight. He hadn't just nudged this along, he built it. They didn't wait for me to fail. They created failure around me. I clenched the pages tight in my fist. Years of wondering. Years of walking on eggshells, thinking I was too sensitive. Turns out, they just kept stomping. I paced the floor, documents still in hand, air buzzing around me like electricity. All those years of second-guessing myself. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I was being dramatic. No, they gaslit me into silence. And I bought it. Not anymore. I gathered the files, photos, ledger, everything, and placed them in a lockbox I brought in from the garage. My hands were steadier now. I turned off the desk lamp. The study fell into soft shadow. But inside, something had flipped. This wasn't just about loss anymore. It was about justice. My phone buzzed on the hallway table. No caller ID. The message read, "We need to talk, now." I moved to the window, heart already quickening. A black sedan pulled slowly into the driveway. Tinted windows, engine still running, the passenger side window rolled down. It was Corbin. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stared at me with the same look he used to give when we were kids, and he'd broken something but blamed me. No words yet, but I knew this was going to be the conversation they all hoped would never happen. I grabbed the box, took a breath, and stepped outside. I locked the study door behind me and carried everything to the dining room table. Sat down slow, like my legs didn't quite trust the ground anymore. I spread out the contents, ledger, negatives, signed reports, that damn note saying I was emotionally unfit. It all lay before me like a crime scene. One photo slipped loose, Mom and my brother's daughter carving pumpkins. I remembered that day. I was the one who drove Mom to get the pumpkins. Waited in the car while they all posed for pictures. Never asked to be in one. Just assumed that wasn't my place. But now I saw it clear. That was by design. I read through a document again. He's unpredictable. Should not be granted control. My name wasn't just left out of the story. It had been written out, erased with paperwork. I slid everything into fresh manila folders, labeled each in bold ink. Evidence, do not discard. Felt almost like preparing for trial, but not in a courtroom. This was the kind of trial fought with shadows, whispers, and locked drawers. I took a breath and picked up the phone. Reed Caro answered on the fourth ring. Reed, I found something. I need you to look at some handwriting. He was quiet for a beat, then said, Where? Coffee house on 5th, 1 hour. The coffee shop was quiet, only a few older couples and a student or two hunched over laptops. I slid into the back booth, pulled out the papers. While I waited, I hit play on my phone. Mom's voice filled my ears again. I know they've shut you out, but I see you, Gordon. I always did. I closed my eyes, let her words sink in again like medicine that stings before it heals. Reed arrived. Worn denim shirt, same cautious kindness in his eyes. We didn't hug, didn't need to. I handed him the document. He studied it, tilted it toward the light. This is Elias's, he said. No hesitation. You're sure? Same slant, same crossbars. He signed your mother's refinancing paperwork, remember? I saw those too. I nodded. So it wasn't an accident. It never was. He looked up, pain softening his voice. Gordon, I don't know what they were thinking. I did. Control, plain and simple. By mid-afternoon, I was in front of Elias's office. Clean cut, polished glass, new paint, a shiny mask for something rotten underneath. He greeted me like a man who had no idea the floor beneath him was about to give out. You still want that old dresser from Mom's room? He asked, smiling like we were buddies from back when... Sure, I said, walking in, but that's not why I'm here. He offered me coffee. I declined. I laid the document on his desk. Why's your handwriting on this? His face twitched. He cleared his throat. Corbin asked me to, said it was just for precaution, with everything going on. With Mom declining, I cut in. You thought precaution meant cutting me out behind closed doors? He leaned back. I didn't know you'd see it that way. Yeah, well, I do. I thought we were protecting her. No, I said. You were protecting yourselves. From me. From what? My loyalty, my caregiving, my voice? He glanced away. I'm sorry, Hart, he whispered. I really thought it was for the best. That name, Hart. Mom used to call me that. Hearing it from him made my jaw clench. I didn't answer. I just walked out. That evening, the sun dipped behind the trees. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. On the local community board, under a fake name, I posted one line. They thought silence would bury me. Wait for the truth. Didn't take long. Comments started rolling in. What's this about? Who's he talking about? Is this about the Millers? My phone buzzed. A message from Lexi, a local reporter I knew from a story years ago. Saw your post. Let me know when you're ready to talk. I stared out the window, leaves rustling, wind rising. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Not loved, not forgiven, but seen. I was shutting down the laptop when I heard the knock. Then the door opened. Corbin. He walked in like he owned the place. No greeting, just dropped a thick folder on my table, same files I'd just organized, but now with new witness statements. He looked me dead in the eyes. You really want war? I stood up, slow, calm, still, the way you do when a storm's been forecasted and you're not running from it anymore. I said, only if you want to lose everything. The paper hit the front step with a thud, same as it had every Tuesday for years, only this time it felt like a bullet. I opened it. There I was, front page, bold headline, Scandal Rocks Novikov family, Gordon's mental fitness under fire. Underneath, chunks of those very smear files I'd found days ago, pulled quotes from anonymous sources, some not even spelled right. Gordon Novikov has exhibited emotionally erratic behavior. Family members have raised concerns about his judgment. Possible financial instability. No context. No mention of my years caring for mom or the bills I paid or the nights I slept on her floor when she was afraid. Just grainy photos, old ones, me at my worst angles, always alone. I dropped the paper. My hands trembled. It didn't feel like shock anymore. It felt like someone had stepped on my chest, hard. My voice caught in my throat. They went public, I muttered. They actually did it. Not through lawyers, not in court. In the town paper. By late afternoon, I knew where I had to be, the community hall. Word spread fast in small towns. Tonight's meeting was no longer just about zoning permits or potholes. It was about me. The parking lot was full. Cars I recognized. Some I didn't. A few neighbors gave me polite nods. One woman I'd known for years crossed the sidewalk to avoid me. Inside, Corbin stood at the podium like a politician, voice calm and polished. As many of you read this morning, our family has been dealing with sensitive issues, he said, almost rehearsed. We wish Gordon the best, but we also want what's best for Mom's legacy, for this community. He wore that smile, the one he'd perfected over the years. Public concern, private control. I walked down the center aisle. Each step was a weight. I sat front row, not because I wanted the spotlight, because I wouldn't let them talk around me anymore. I stood. You decided for everyone that my reputation was disposable. My voice carried. Corbin blinked. I didn't print anything. The press came to us. The press came to you with documents from your own desk? Murmurs. I've been silent for years. You never invited me into the room, and now you stand here and say you wish me well? We had to protect Mom's wishes, he snapped, slipping. You mean protect your narrative? The room grew quiet. My phone buzzed. It was Reed. Text. Play this. Now. An audio clip downloaded, labeled Nora's last message, full version. I hit play and held the mic close. Mom's voice filled the hall, older, tired, raw. If you're hearing this, they've cut Gordon out again. Corbin, Maris, you don't see what you've done to your own brother. He's always been my hope. You don't get to rewrite that. Gasps. The room shifted. Eyes that were full of doubt, now wide. I looked at Corbin. You hid her voice. You forced it silent. Tonight, she speaks. He froze. From the back, someone handed me a paper. I unfolded it. An email chain. From Rand's office to Corbin. Clear language. Payment approved for media messaging. Names of contacts. Local journalists. Money trails. Proof. I held it up. Let's be real. You didn't just paint me as unstable. You bought the brush. Gasps turned to whispers. The door opened again. Maris stepped in, blazer, red lipstick, shaking hands. You don't understand what you're doing, she said. No, I replied. You never let me understand. You decided I was the problem. Corbin still hadn't moved. I walked back to the mic. This is the last time any of you speak for me without my voice in the room. I turned, walked through the aisle. People parted like water. Outside, dusk settled like a blanket over the lot. That's when I saw Elias, sitting in his car, engine running, window down. He looked at me, not angry, not smug, something unreadable in his face. He nodded once and waited. I stood in the center of my living room, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the screen. Outside, the sun was setting low, casting long shadows across the floorboards. The gathering was already underway at the community hall. Folks were waiting. Not for answers exactly, but for drama. Maybe for a fall. I didn't plan to give them either. I tapped play on the recording and walked out the door. Inside the hall, folding chairs creaked as neighbors shifted in their seats. Some familiar faces, others I hadn't seen in years. All eyes turned when I stepped forward and placed my phone on the table. Some of you have already heard part of this. Tonight, you'll hear the rest. I pressed the speaker icon. My mother's voice filled the room. I hid the evidence. I made them believe he was unstable. I wanted to protect him, but I only made it worse. She named names. Corbin and Maris pushed me. Said it was best. Said he'd ruin things. Her words floated, clear and soft, like they'd been waiting years to be heard. The room fell still. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I let her voice speak for both of us. She never stopped protecting me, I said quietly, even when she got it wrong. A few people lowered their eyes. One woman covered her mouth. Then I took out the letter. The same one from that drawer. The one I had missed the meaning of for years. But now, with fresh eyes and time to study, I saw the notes scribbled in the margins, the red underlines she'd made, and on the back, a sketched map leading to the old barn, her handwriting unmistakable. I held the paper up. She wrote this when no one else believed in me. You want to talk about legacy? This is it. I read aloud. He will walk through the fire and claim his rightful place. That line used to sound dramatic, cryptic. Now it felt like prophecy. She knew something had to survive this. Not the house, not the money. Me! Murmurs rippled. A few folks stood, craning their necks to see the page. Then Corbin stood. Stop twisting her words, he barked. You're turning grief into a circus. Maris joined him, arms crossed. You're embarrassing this family. I stared at them. I'm not twisting anything. I'm bringing up what you buried. From the back, someone spoke up, a man I hadn't seen in a decade. We always thought you were the troubled one, Hart. This changes that. I didn't nod, didn't smile, just breathed. Elias remained at the rear, eyes heavy, like he wanted to speak but knew his time had passed. Then I walked over to Mr. Rand. I handed him copies of the amended will and the smear documents. I need these submitted to probate court and public registry. He glanced at the papers, lips tight. This reopens her estate, he said. I know. He nodded slowly. The room buzzed. Chairs scraped. People whispered. Corbin threw his hands in the air and stormed out. Maris followed, her face pale. I didn't chase them. Not this time. I turned back toward the center of the room. Alone on that stage, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. A soft breeze rolled through the open door. Something about it, maybe how it touched the back of my neck, felt like Mom saying, keep going. I whispered to no one in particular, this ends tonight. As I packed up my things, my phone lit up. A number I didn't know. Message. You think you know it all? You don't. I stared at it. No anger, no panic, just ready. The neighborhood was still. Not a single car on the street, not a porch light flickering. Just me, standing in the dark, staring at the entrance of Corbin's office. I slipped the key card into the slot. A soft beep, then the door clicked open. Inside, the air smelled like old toner and fresh lies. I moved quickly, not bothering with lights. I knew exactly what I came for. The file was already there, digital, buried under decoy folders. I plugged in my flash drive and opened the file. The contract stared back. Backdated, clean, her name typed and scanned. But I had the proof. Metadata showed it was created 3 days after she passed. Her signature didn't match. I compared it to her old tax forms. Different pressure, different slant. They faked her consent. My hands were steady as I copied the file, then emailed it out to 3 outlets, 2 attorneys, and the probate clerk. This time, there would be no quiet cover-up. They thought this would be the end of me, I whispered, dragging the file into the cloud. They just gave me the reason to start over. Back home, I poured a glass of water and stood by the window. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. Text read, "Stop now or everything burns with you." I stared at the screen. No name, just a threat. A second later, another ping. This time from Shirley, the neighbor who always watched the street like it was her TV. I saw someone leave something at your back door, she wrote. I walked slow, quiet, toward the rear. Envelope on the mat. No markings. Inside, a single printed photo of my father's old work truck, engulfed in flames. The message, not subtle. A knock came, right then, right behind me, back door. I peered through the peephole. I knew that face, used to trust it. I didn't open. I didn't move. I just stood there, letting them know I was aware. The night dragged on. Right before sunrise, I scrolled my phone and saw it. The town paper had posted Mom's obituary online, a full tribute, her strength, her charity, her love for the children who stood by her. Corbin's name, Maris's, even Elias, mine, absent, not a footnote, not a mention. I didn't scream, I didn't curse. I just clicked into the comment box and typed, I walked every mile beside her. That was all. But within minutes, the post lit up. Folks commenting, some confused, others angry. Neighbors started asking real questions. The sky turned pale. I changed shirts, took the flash drive, and headed to the family meeting hall. The room was fuller than I expected. Family, reporters, community leaders. Corbin stood near the front, flanked by Maris and Elias, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. I walked to the center. You published lies. You forged her signature. You erased me. Corbin stepped forward. You don't have proof. I didn't answer. I just pulled the projector remote from my pocket and hit play. The contract displayed, highlighted metadata, forged date, misaligned signature. Then the audio. Mom's voice, shaking but clear. I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong ones. Gasps. Whispers. You don't understand what you're doing, Corbin said through gritted teeth. No, I replied, stepping closer. I understand exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing what she always wanted. I'm telling the truth. Corbin's fists clenched. His mouth moved like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. He stormed out. Maris followed, her voice barely above a whisper. This is too far. Elias lingered, then walked out too, leaving Corbin's coat behind on the back of his chair. I stood alone, facing the projector. No one clapped, no one cheered, but no one denied what they saw either. The glow of the projector dimmed, but the silence around it felt heavier than noise. Then blue lights flickered through the windows. A police cruiser pulled up outside the hall. And I knew. This time the law came to us, and I wasn't about to let them leave with half the truth. I woke up on the couch still wearing the same clothes from the night before. My body ached, not from one thing, but from everything. The silence inside the house felt unfamiliar. No ringing phones, no footsteps outside, no urgent knock on the door, just stillness. I reached for my phone, dozens of missed calls, unread messages. A news headline flashed in the notification bar. Family feud over estate sparks investigation. I set it down without opening it. I stood, stretched, shuffled to the kitchen, and popped 2 slices of bread in the toaster. Mom used to do the same when I was a kid, sick on the couch, worried about missing school. I smiled at the memory. Then it passed, like a cloud that gives you shade for only a second. I sat at the table. No chaos, just a plate of toast and a calm I hadn't felt in years. Not victory, not relief, just enough. Around mid-morning, there was a knock at the door. It was Mr. Rand, the family lawyer, holding a cardboard box. This came back from probate, he said. It's yours. I thanked him, closed the door, set the box on the dining table. Most of it was junk, outdated papers, receipts, old bank statements, but at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, there was an envelope sealed with a wax stamp. On the front, for Gordon when the dust settles. I sat down. My hands shook, but I peeled the wax open. Her handwriting spilled out in long, looping letters. Familiar, intimate. She wrote of regrets, about letting the family fight too long without stepping in, about believing silence would fix what noise never could, about how sorry she was for how things turned out between me and my siblings, but most of all, she wrote about me. You are not less for walking away from what broke you, she said. You never were. I didn't cry from pain. I cried because, for the first time, I felt seen, not as a problem, not as a burden, not as the black sheep, but as her son. Later that afternoon, I drove out to the cemetery with the letter in my coat pocket and the old prayer book tucked under my arm. I hadn't been back since the funeral. The sky was clear, air dry. I walked up to her stone and knelt down. I found it, Ma. The key, not the one you left in the drawer, the one I didn't even know I was missing. It was here the whole time. I pulled the photo from my jacket. One of us as kids, muddy from creek water, smiling like idiots. I laid it beside her stone and whispered, I'm done carrying what was never mine. I stood up, took one last look, then walked away. I didn't feel light. I felt whole. By the time I got home, a few neighbors had already gathered on my porch. They weren't there for drama. No reporters, no questions, just folks. We sat around the living room, the same one that had felt like a battlefield just days ago. Nobody mentioned the will. Nobody brought up the court. They talked about Mom. She gave me her spare heater when our power went out in '97, one man said. She used to send my kids cookies every Christmas, another added. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the old recipe box, pulled out her pecan shortbread card, mixed a batch and passed them around. Maris didn't show up, Corbin didn't call, Elias didn't write, and for once I didn't need them to. I raised a glass, just water, and said, to silence, that doesn't sting. That night, I opened a new journal and wrote the title on the first page, Lessons from a Quiet Fire. I thought about starting a grief group, something for men over 50, folks like me, too old to be angry, too young to give up. I put the prayer book on the living room shelf, not to hide it, not to forget it, just to let it rest. She didn't leave me money, didn't leave me property, but she left me the truth. And that was enough. As I shut the journal and turned off the lamp, my phone lit up. A message from Elias. It read, "Can we talk alone?"